Hey, this is Andrew Nemec with the Oregonian and Oregon Live. I'm joined by high school football expert Jordan Johnson. Class of 2017 rankings. It's early, but given the number of come out in the last couple weeks, it seems fitting. I've done a top 10 with an honorable mention of 6 or 7 names, so essentially a top 15, 16. You've done a top 50 because you're insane.
Yes, sir.
How many hours did that take you, and how deep is that with real, legit FCS, FBS talents?
Took a while. I mean, most of those take a couple days, to sit on it for a minute and kind of look over it and just kind of critique yourself and see who has the top end potential. This class is going to be one of the better classes ever to come through Oregon, the 2017 group. So, like you said, with these offers coming in over this last week, that is pretty early for a junior group to get these offers. So you can kind of see these top 10 kids especially are all Pac-12 kids. And with this last year, we had 10 Pac-12 type kids, but that's a rarity within the state of Oregon. We might end up with 15 or more Pac-12 athletes in this class. So overall, it's going to be fun to watch. And with some of these linemen being high-end kids, it's gonna be a fun spring and summer.
It's really unbelievable how deep this group is, and not only that, but I think this year is exciting because of the high end talent. Certainly, the top three, maybe as far as six, are going to have not only offers from the Pac-12 but some other major conferences, and you don't often see that from the Oregon kids. You look at a guy like Brady Breeze, as talented as he was, and I know he was legacy and he committed early, but he didn't have a lot of offers from Big Ten, SEC schools, that type of thing. Lamar Winston, another great prospect, had an offer from Michigan, but for the most part, his offers were Pac-12. We're already seeing some of these guys, Elijah Molten, obviously, in particular, seeing them get major offers from across the country. And I think it could be six guys deep where you're seeing an SEC offer, an ACC offer for these guys. I think they're going to be national recruits, and that's really exciting. Want to talk to you first about honorable mention guys, and then we'll work our way up to that top 10. And I'll just list my honorable mention, and I feel bad even having this guy on the honorable mention because he's popped in the last even week. Demetrius Douglas from Jesuit just picked up an offer from Oregon. Also has an offer from Colorado State. 5'11", 170, really fluid. One of your guys, one of the guys that we debated, and I almost didn't even put him on my list for all-state, all-prospect defense. You said put him on there so you don't look silly. I finally did. I do trust you, but I put him on the honorable mention list. He blows up. Now he has an offer from Oregon. He probably belongs in the 7 spot, I would think now, at least. Missed a lot of the year with a lacerated kidney. He missed the first half of the year with a lacerated kidney, then broke his hand. So, in fairness to me, I didn't get to see him play much. But still, I missed. On the film I had him honorable mention, and obviously he's higher than that. What do you think of Demetrius Douglas? Father played in the NFL, obviously a high ceiling.
Yeah, Omar Douglas played for the Giants from 94 to 98. Last week he opened up with an offer from Colorado State and then followed it up this weekend with Oregon. And I think Demetrius, with regards to him as a kid, he's a phenomenal kid. We talk about a lot of good kids, but just from a character standpoint, you're not going to find a better overall athlete with that combination. And I think with just natural fluidity, just his ability, his swivel, his hips, his ability to cut and just bounce is so natural. That was the first thing that I noticed from him last year when we went out to Vegas.
Yep.
He was just so incredibly fluid. This year, on his first 5 touches, he had took 4 to the house, and he picked the ball and took that to the house. And that was halfway, like as you referenced, halfway through the season after his injury. So he came right back in, got in the mix, and did his thing. And when Oregon offers you, they do their research, as everyone knows, and they're not just going to throw that out there. So that kind of solidifies, I think, for Demetrius what type of athlete he is. And, obviously he's going to have some options if he wants with regards to other schools. But for the Ducks to come in and offer you this early, if it's me, I really, really think about that and potentially, think about committing.
Well, I think he was our biggest debater, one of our biggest debates all of last year. He was a guy that we talked about both in podcasts and off. So I went and saw him, and I think I texted you or I talked to you very shortly after and said, it took me 2 plays, and I was like, oh, wow, for his length, he's incredibly fluid. I think he can end up being 6 foot 190. If he can keep that fluidity, I think he's a really talented kid and a big ceiling. Even as he was banged up, I saw him, one of his first games back, I still put a low Pac-12, high Mountain West, kind of that mid-major to low-level major conference type of kid, and obviously he's blown up. Mason Elliott, Anthony Adams, Michael Abraham, 3 really talented players. Anthony Adams is a 3-sport varsity athlete from his freshman year. Mason Elliott, a 6'3", 170-pound receiver, really talented. Michael Abraham, 6'1", 6'2", 230 defensive end, linebacker out of Central Catholic. I like all 3 of those guys, and I think to me the reason I clump them together is I think that all 3 of them have a chance to pop, have a chance to make it high up on this top 10 list, but need it to come together. And not that they're not talented already. They're obviously talented kids. But to get to that next level to become a top 10 kid, we need to see him pop here this spring, this summer, and then early in the fall.
Yeah, Anthony Adams, I mean, he's killed it playing for us the last couple of years, 7-on-7 wise, 4-sport varsity athlete as a freshman, first team All-League as a sophomore in the TRL, which is obviously the SEC of high school football around here. He's a kid, his brother Darnell Adams, 6'3", 210 wide receiver from Portland State, one of the better players in the Big Sky Conference. I think Anthony has that type of potential with continued growth. He was playing the quarterback spot for Newburgh, so it's hard from a film standpoint to justify certain things, and I think he's a kid, unfortunately, that could fall a little bit for those reasons. I think he is an unquestioned Division I athlete. I am a little biased because I just love the kid, but he is an unquestioned D1 athlete. In my book, he's a top 10 guy if you reference that top 50 that I just put out. But he's right there, and it'll be tough just from a film standpoint because he is playing quarterback, which is what he most likely won't play in college.
Right. No, he's not a quarterback in college unless he went somewhere where like Navy or something and was a Keenan Reynolds type of guy. He's probably going to go somewhere where if he played quarterback, he would be a running old school like Tommy Frazier from Nebraska type of guy. He's definitely more of a safety corner or receiver, I would think, at the college level.
The epitome of the athlete position
totally.
is Anthony Adams. Mason Elliott, offered by Idaho a while back. It'll be interesting to see what he does moving forward. Big, good-looking kid, 6'3", $180. Statistically went off last year, and his quarterback will be back. So he'll be there without Samori Torrey, who's headed to Montana. So Mason Elliott has that ceiling, and he has the projection of grabbing some mid-majors and or a Pac-12, depending how he does this offseason. Haven't seen him at too much offseason stuff. And then I will openly admit with Michael Abraham, he's a kid, for whatever reason, that's kind of gotten under the radar. He's playing D-end / running back / tight end for Pine and the Rams, and he's a great-looking kid. I mean, he's 6'3", 220, and can run. And he's someone that people should definitely take a look at this offseason.
And the good thing there is, whereas we just talked about Anthony Adams playing kind of the wrong position for his future, and at Newburgh, not a school that's going to get a lot of looks, Abraham's the opposite. He's slotted in a number of positions, so teams will get a number of looks at him at positions he could play at the next level. And not only that, being at Central Catholic, being with Coach Pine, a lot of good pieces there for him to get seen. Just like Anthony maybe slides under the radar, Abraham's a guy that might even elevate because of where he's at, because he will get so many looks. The other 3 honorable mention guys before we jump into that top 10 for me are 3 quarterbacks. 2 from the IMC, the Intermountain Conference. Mike Irwin out of Mountain View, as a sophomore, was a player of the year. John Bledsoe from Summit, quarterback. And West Lynn quarterback Tim Tao, 2-time Gatorade Player of the Year, just broke the state passing record. Of those 3, who do you like, and where do you see those guys projecting?
So Tim Tao committed to Stanford for baseball. I mean, threw 50 touchdowns and 3 picks for 4,420 yards. So from a statistical standpoint, you can't really say much except the kid's ridiculous. But he's 5'11". Maybe the most accurate passer I've ever seen. At the high school level
sure.
in Oregon, just
sure.
Ridiculous accuracy. But once again, he's going to play baseball. So what are the other options here? Is he going to go be the Stanford quarterback? They've got a gem coming in, and they like those big quarterbacks there at Stanford. So I have him listed at 12 on my top 50 just because he does have that type of potential. I think he is a Division I quarterback at some level if he wanted to be, but that would have to counter his baseball scholarship at Stanford.
I've talked to him a little bit about it and just said, where do you stand personally? And putting, what anyone else thinks aside, he's said that he'd like to go to Stanford, and that's where he feels comfortable, and he wants to play baseball at Stanford. So it's not that he's not open to the idea. If another coach, I don't want to ever put out publicly that by any stretch he's saying, I don't want to be recruited for football. He does, but I think for him it's going to be Stanford or nothing. Or Stanford, or he's not going to take any other offer. So I think he's either going to play baseball and football at Stanford, or he's going to, as in nothing, he's not going to play football at all, and he'll focus on baseball. He's a really talented baseball player, and people need to understand it's not like, baseball's kind of his secondary sport. He's an elite baseball prospect. He's one of the top baseball prospects on the whole West Coast. So size-wise, you worry about his ceiling in football, but in baseball, he's perfect. And I've heard the comp, and I haven't seen him play, but I've heard the comp of Jacoby Ellsbury. If he could somehow end up being that great, obviously, big-time multi-million-dollar future there. I really like Mike Irwin, 6'1", 200 pounds, really thick in the shoulders, makes good decisions, very mobile, can run really well. I think he's almost a dual-threat quarterback at the next level because he is mobile, but not in the traditional sense that people think in terms of like being elusive, more kind of different size and everything, but more like Andrew Luck in that way, just in the mobility where he's so physical that he's able to kind of put his shoulders down and get 4 or 5 trucking people. That's kind of the type of guy I see him being, a passer first, but a guy who can put his pads down and get to that second level and gain 7 or 8 yards. I like him a little better right now than John Bledsoe. I think he's very talented, but I'd still just like to see it come together. He's got the body, he's got obviously the genes, but I just want to see him be elite consistently for an entire season where he's healthy, and then maybe he moves up. What do you think of those between those two guys?
Yeah, I think Mike Irwin, he's been out at our stuff for the better part of the last month, and his stock has risen significantly. I mean, from a running standpoint, I think his last game before he got injured, he threw for 250 and ran for 250 and 5 touchdowns versus
unreal.
Yeah, versus last year's 4A state champions Gladstone, and that just kind of puts into perspective how dangerous he is, both throwing the ball and running. And yeah, I agree with you, man. I think he's at least a D1 AA kid, and he's another just phenomenal just human being. So
I think Big Sky is the right fit for him. It'd be interesting. I think he's a guy potentially that Portland State could really benefit from adding. I think he's very talented. I did want to ask you, because I feel kind of weird. I don't mean to compare him to Andrew Luck in the overall skill set, but you know what I'm saying in that running style where you're like a bigger bodied guy who does have pretty good vision and is able to get extra yards. Do you see what I'm saying there, or do you see something different?
Yeah, I mean,
you see something different.
We'll see what he does next year. I mean, there's some things in the, we'll see. Because with regards to Bledsoe, it's really interesting. 2 kids out there that are both very talented. I had some people hit me up and say, look, just so you know, Mike Irwin is better than John Bledsoe. Right. And I said, okay, I appreciate your opinion. And Bledsoe just won the state title and had a very good year, and obviously has those genes and a great foundation to work with. So it'll be interesting to see both of those kids being out in Bend. They really need to get themselves out there on the circuit.
Sure.
With Bledsoe getting that Northern Arizona offer. I'm sure he'll have other similar type offers, especially with that last name. But he's earned it too. I don't want to just say it because his last name is Bledsoe. I mean, he's definitely had a very, very good year. I don't know if it was like 31 TDs to 3 picks, something like that. So he is deserving. But I agree with you on Mike Irwin. I think Mike Irwin is definitely a Division I quarterback, probably at the Big Sky level or something like that. So regardless, we have those 3 plus DeQuan Dennis Lee from Oregon City, who's a super talented kid. So it's going to be a fun year for quarterbacks next season.
And I guess just one last time to reiterate, Andrew Luck, not saying Mike Irwin is Andrew Luck by any stretch. I just mean almost bringing that fullback ball carrier mentality to the quarterback position.
Yeah.
This class is so deep on the offensive line that it is absolutely silly. I know a lot of them work with Alex Lennon. I'm working with him to try to set up an opportunity to see all these guys together, just so I have a better understanding of what they bring to the table. I'll admit, of my analysis, my weakest point is offensive line. I don't always see that super well. There are times when I get tricked on film a little bit, depending on the talent they're going against. Offensive line is not my strong suit, so I rely on Alex to kind of help guide me. But I do know that Cody Shear, Alex Forsyth, Travis McKay, and Jackson Kirkland are 4 legit prospects. I've got Cody Shear at 10. I've got Alex Forsyth from West Lynn, 6'4", 300 pounds. He's probably going to play a guard. I've got him at 9, and I've got Travis McKay from Central Catholic, a 6'6", 260-pound tackle, at 8. Cody Shear might be, and you were talking about this earlier, Cody Shear, though, might be the most developed, the most solid right now offensive lineman in the state, and he's at 10.
Yeah, so
For me.
with, you reference Alex Linenkel, who has been coaching with us for the last 3-4 years since his, so he played at Oregon State, as most people know, and then went on to the pros for a little while, and then his Line Pro is the name of his separate company where he's training all of these linemen. We're actually going to have, as you referenced, all these guys together, and it'll be really fun to watch them go toe-to-toe and compete, because 8, 9 of the top kids, as Jackson Kirkland, Alex Forsyth, Cody Shear, Travis McKay, plus we got the Dolls, who are all state returning with that Jesuit group, plus the top sophomore center, probably on the West Coast, Travis Spreen for Jesuit coming back, and then Dawson Jarmillo, the number 1 or 2 O-lineman in the country.
Considered a 5-star already by 24/7 Sports,
So all those guys training, and this is probably coming, the next week or 2 or what have you, and we're going to have all these guys together, and it'll be a lot of fun. I mean, this last week, just this last week, Hawaii, Washington State, San Diego State, Colorado State, Nevada, all offered these kids, at least Kirkland, Forsyth, and Cody Shear.
Right.
So from a offer standpoint, this spring and summer, when these guys are out on the circuit, I think it's going to be pretty ridiculous with regards to Pac-12s and a host of other big-time schools extending offers.
And that's where this year is different than in years past. I mean, we looked at, in my initial early list, I just looked at it the other day because I knew we were doing this podcast. I had Jordan Happel at 7 or 8. He didn't get an offer from a major school until Boise State the day before signing day. That's not to disparage Jordan Happel in any way. He was just overlooked. My point is, this group is not overlooked. I have Cody Shear 10. Cody Shear's already picking up offers. He's already got an offer from Hawaii. Did he pick up an offer from Nevada?
He did, just 2 days ago.
So he's got an offer from, so these guys are already starting to gather offers, and I think it's a credit to how deep this class is that any of the top 10 now are legit possible Pac-12 kids, and it could pop any day. Whereas 7, 8, 9, 10 in last year's group was a wait-and-see approach. Kalen, I think, was 10 or honorable mention, and Kalen had to wait to see till the very, very end, the very last day, how it was going to play out. These kids are not going to have to worry about waiting until the last day. It might be 15 deep with kids who don't have to worry about that last day and do have a Pac-12 or high-level mid-major offer like a Boise State to choose from in January and December. It's really exciting. In terms of Shear, Forsyth, McKay, I have them 8 through 10. Who do you like the best out of that group, and who do you think has the highest ceiling?
So I had Kirkland at 6. This is my initial before these 7 offers came in or
Sure.
what have you. So Kirkland 6, Forsyth 7, Shear 8, and then I have McKay 11.
Okay.
I think Kirkland could very well end up, super, super high on that list. I think, these offers are coming really quickly, so who knows? The linemen have the biggest, have the most potential because they're linemen. Doesn't, out of the Northwest, skill kids aren't necessarily where they're found, even though we do got some good ones. But from a lineman standpoint, this could definitely be a special class. So separate from that, obviously Marlon Tuipulotu could be offered by Alabama and a lot of schools like that.
Way up the list.
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet. Of the 3, and I've got Kirkland way up my list, McKay, Forsyth, Shear. I have McKay highest, and I don't necessarily think that's at 8. I don't think that's necessarily based on production now. I just like his frame. He's 6'6", 260. He's got long arms. Potential, I think, if he puts on 30 more pounds, we're talking 6'6", 290, and there's a lot to like in a right tackle potentially at that size. I really like him for his potential, but I think Shear and Forsyth are ahead of him right now in terms of ability on the field, and I think, you look at Cody Shear, and as fluid as he is at 6'4", 280, he's got a real chance to blow up and be a big-time prospect too. Number 7, I kind of took a little bit of a flyer. I really like Malik Thurgood from Central Catholic, tight end, defensive end, outside linebacker. He's 6'4", 235 pounds, and very fluid for that body. He has soft hands. He catches the ball well. He's an animal. I really like Malik Thurgood. Where do you stand with him in terms of on-field production versus projection? Because, again, I'm basing a lot of that on projection.
Yeah, well, most of these kids that we've spoken on thus far, I mean, we get to see almost every week because they're training with us. So Malik's not one of those kids.
Right.
So it's harder to say. I mean, from a 6'4", 235-pound standpoint, the kid's could be a freak. You know, I mean, he runs extremely well. He played tight end but didn't play defense last year. So, you know, I'm not the coach, but that makes me question, like, why not? Because if you're that dominant, why would you not be on the field on the defensive side of the ball?
And I think he is a future defensive end linebacker too in college. I think more than tight end.
Absolutely.
So, I wasn't real sure about that either, but that's why I just throw it out, tight end, defensive end, linebacker, because that to me projects on the defensive side of the ball. Love the body. Again, you don't get to see him a ton, and Central Catholic had again a really weird year. When you look at guys like Brady Breeze and Lamar Winston, who are both going to Oregon, and say their production was inconsistent, a guy that's a year younger and is only playing one side of the ball, he got lost in the shuffle. And I think a lot of guys for Central Catholic got lost in the shuffle, and I don't really know why, but I didn't feel like for as much talent as Central Catholic had. Travis McKay, another one, really talented kids that just didn't pop in games, and I don't really know why. Number 6, 4-star quarterback Connor Neville. He's rated the number 18 quarterback in the nation by Scout. Offers already from Washington State, Boise State, and Hawaii. The very first time I heard about Connor Neville, I was working at the Oregonian, but had just gotten started, wasn't covering recruiting, and the comp, because people have crazy comps, it was one of the best ones I've ever heard, though. They comped Connor Neville to Peyton Manning when he was an 8th grader or a 9th grader, and I kind of rolled my eyes and whatever. And he's talented. I mean, he's very good. He's a 4-star quarterback, but it just cracks me up because you hear that stuff all the time. Kind of a separate tangent. What's the funniest comp you've gotten?
I mean, I've seen Connor since he was 12 or something, and he was so far ahead as a 12-year-old, like, just from a fundamental standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, maybe there wasn't anybody better. You know, and he's still in a class of his own with regards to within QBs within this region. I mean, he is a kid that just lives and breathes football. If you want to talk about the game, I mean, that kid can break it down as well as anybody. So I think Connor's ceiling is pretty ridiculous, and he will. He's our quarterback for 7-on-7.
Sure.
So we have a chance because of him.
Right.
I mean,
he's really good.
He's dialed. So we'll see. I mean, he's 6'2", $195, super smart. And he's got the potential to really, with a successful offseason, to pull in some big time offers, which for anyone isn't easy to do. So we'll see. I mean, he plays at Wilsonville, so he's going to tear up that conference, put up ridiculous numbers. But we'll see. This offseason is going to tell a lot with Connor.
Any comps that are funny for you?
I
mean, not for Connor. In general, what's the funniest comp you've gotten on a kid ever that you just went, are you serious? Because it just didn't fit.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I can say on here.
Okay. I got another one from a kid recently that just graduated. I think he's going to go to Western Oregon or Southern Oregon, and was a slot receiver from a major program, and was told by one of the guys that worked with him privately that he was the next DeAnthony Thomas.
Oh.
And I kind of went, the next DeAnthony Thomas? He's like, no, he is DeAnthony. That's the comp. And it's like, oh, okay. It's funny sometimes how people comp. And you know what's funny is for Connor being an 8th grader and being compared to Peyton Manning, and that's not an accurate comp or anything, but he's actually panned out and been pretty good. The number of kids you hear the next whoever and they never do anything is pretty jaw-dropping. Connor's legit. I mean, Connor has a chance to make that Elite 11 camp for the top 18, 19 kids in the nation come July in Beaverton. He was there last year,
Yeah.
and he went to every day.
Yeah.
And it was like, Connor, what are you doing here, man? And he's like, I want to see what they do so I can practice that stuff so I can be ready. It's like, are you serious? He's like, yeah.
That's what he does.
I drove out here every day. He did. He drove out every day and spent the whole day there and watched everything. It was like, I think I can earn a spot. Now, he's right on the bubble because he's 18 by Scout. The top 18 or 19 guys get invited to that. So he's right there. I think it could happen for him, and that would be a huge honor for him because he's really worked hard to get there. Obviously, he was the only quarterback I saw there that was a junior that was saying, I'm going to be here next year and I want to see it. And I thought that was impressive. Number 5, David Morris, Sherwood, linebacker safety, 6'3", 200 pounds, offers from Oregon State, and I don't have all of them written down. Does he have Washington State yet?
So I have Neville at 5 and David Morris at 4, just so
Okay.
you and I.
Yeah.
So he has Cal, Hawaii, or he just got Hawaii. He has Oregon State, Cal, Hawaii, and Colorado State.
Okay, Colorado State. Okay,
Yes.
There we go. Really talented kid. I've liked David since he was, I think, a sophomore. He was the 3rd string running back for Sherwood, and we watched their game, and they dominated. He had like 6 carries for 80 yards or something and 2 touchdowns. And after the game, a bunch of Oregonian people were there covering the game, and I said, that kid is amazing. And they said, well, he wasn't the best player. You know, there were kids that ran for 150 yards, 200 yards. And I said, David Morris is the kid we want to talk to. That kid's unbelievable because you could see how fluid he was for how young and how big he was. And that's only continued. 6'3", 200 pounds, incredibly fluid for that size. Could actually stay at safety. I don't think he's going to. I think he might grow another inch and be a 6'4", 225 linebacker that moves real well, can drop back into coverage or come off the edge and blitz. But I love David Morris. I think he's one of the most talented kids in the state.
Yeah, I am a huge advocate of David Morris. I think he's going to be one of the most recruited kids to come out of here in some time. I've been hollering David's name for a while. He was an All-American type at the 7-on-7 tourney last year that we went to, broke out there. And credit to the schools that have got on him early because there have been kids similar, like a Ryan Nall, for example, that didn't have, he had Oregon State. That's it. Portland State, Oregon State. And David Morris is big, fast, very similar. Probably projects as more on the defensive side of the ball, but averaged 17.5 yards a touch, made 77 tackles, picked off a couple balls last year, and that was somewhat sparing time because they beat up people. So anyways, David is a kid that I think we'll see how long he waits from a commitment standpoint, but I think a majority of the Pac-12 can offer before he is done.
My number 4 is Jackson Kirkland. I went out on a little bit of a limb there, but I think he's going to justify that, and I think he could even climb. I don't know if he's there right now. I don't know if most college coaches would say he's the number 4 player in the state, but I think they will say at least that by the time we get to the fall. 6'7", 300 pounds. Dad played in the NFL. Kind of hadn't put it all together yet, and I'd seen him and he looked good, and I liked him. But I wasn't sure. And then in the state playoffs, good grief, he came on and dominated. Dominated on a level that I haven't seen an offensive lineman from this state do in some time. I think he's going to be a 4-star prospect. I think he's got a chance to be a top 100 player in the country. That's how good I think he is. I know not everybody's sold on that yet, but offers from Washington State and Hawaii, I think Jackson Kirkland's going to blow up.
Yeah, 6'7", 305, as you referenced, with his dad's NFL experience. You can't teach that. And then his ability to run with his size. If you watch his film,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, he just tracks down DBs or linebackers that are significantly smaller and does his thing. So I think and agree with you that Jackson could end up with a majority of the country offering, and with that body, there's certain things that you just that you can't teach. And Lennon Cole, Alex has been doing a phenomenal job working with him. Really likes him, and I think that's what's going to make that event when that comes together. Seeing him against some of those other guys, what he can do. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun to watch him this offseason.
Well, it seems silly to say this because his dad obviously did play in the NFL, so saying he has an NFL ceiling may not mean much given, his dad just did it. But he legitimately has an NFL ceiling, and I think that's exciting. We're at number 4 talking about a guy with an NFL ceiling. The number 6 guy has a chance to make the Elite 11, Connor Neville. It's a deep group, but Jackson Kirkland is my guy. I think Jackson Kirkland's going to blow up. It wouldn't shock me if he ends up making a run at the number 1 spot, even as good as the top 2 and 3 guys are. Number 3, I think we're solid on our top 3. I think we're the same there. Number 3, Madison linebacker Daniel Green got his first offer from Eastern Washington. 6'3", 225, 230 pounds. Twice had 30 tackle games last fall. Unbelievably productive, moves incredibly well. When we say linebacker mentality, he wants to kill people on the field. No fear whatsoever. Really incredible. I think he's a better linebacker prospect than Lamar Winston. And I really like Lamar Winston. He's really talented, obviously a 4-star kid, was at the opening finals, was a U.S. Army All-American nominee. I think Daniel Green is a better pure linebacker prospect, and I think he's the best one in the last 2 years for sure.
Yeah, I think when all is said and done, I think Daniel will have most of the Pac-12. I mean, they're right there right now. I mean, you can talk to his coach, Don Johnson, who, for anyone that doesn't know, is in a class of his own when it comes to helping kids in recruiting.
Yeah.
I mean, he is by far and away the best I've ever seen from a head coaching standpoint. Not to disrespect anybody else, but he legitimately helps more kids than anyone that I've seen. So
and speaking on Don, just real quick, sorry to interrupt, but speaking on Don, I think people don't realize how much he's the coach at Madison, and people don't realize he's got kids from all the top programs in the state coming to him to help find the right fit, to make sure their academics are in order, not grade-wise, but to make sure they have the requirements to get to the NCAA. Not only is he super knowledgeable in that regard, he knows exactly what kids need by looking at their transcripts, but he also is really honest with kids about finding them the right fit and getting them in contact or helping them get in contact with the right coaches to find a fit and get a scholarship. No coach in this state helps more kids get to the right fit. And I'm including guys who coach at the major programs. Some of those major programs have their kids coming out to Madison to help them find a spot. And I think he doesn't get enough credit. And I hope to do a feature with him if he's willing. Likes to kind of be behind the scenes, doesn't like to put that out there a tremendous amount. But he's really involved, and he's saved a number of kids from having to pay their way into college and really found them a fit. And I think major kudos to him.
yeah, you summarized that really, really well. I mean, like I said, Don, he doesn't want the praise, the notoriety, any of that. He takes countless hours of his own time to help people that are either in a situation where they can't help themselves in the recruiting process, or just goes out of his way because he knows what he's able to do. I mean, with his contacts, his father being in the NFL for the last 10 years with the Chargers, a host of other, that's how he grew up, with his dad at UCLA. So he saw what needs to be done from an academic standpoint and from a collegiate standpoint, and he will be he's straight up, man. He will tell you, look, you're not a D1 kid,
Right.
and his gauge is as good as anyone
Yes.
on that. So he's not gonna blow smoke just to make someone feel good. He'll tell you the truth, and that's actually a blessing in disguise, because you waste a lot of time if someone tells you something and it ends up not being accurate. So
Right.
he's very upfront. And from Daniel Green could be the best linebacker to come out of here in, I don't know, a long time. Yeah, got Eastern Washington the other day, and he'll have a ton of other schools. He had to fix a couple things grade-wise, but he's playing on our 7-on-7 team that's leaving to Vegas here in a couple weeks, and it's hard you don't have a bunch of linebackers in a 7-on-7 setting. So he's the type of kid that can run, track down slots and some other guys. So he is not only in uniform dominant, but from a 7-on-7 setting, just super athletic, 6'3", 225, and can run.
You want to talk about an example of a guy, too, that Don has helped tremendously. And Daniel Green readily admits this, so I don't feel like I'm disparaging him in any way. His academics were not where they needed to be, flat out. And he's willing to talk about that. And Don got on him. He makes sure he's there. He makes sure he studies. He's on him to make sure. And Daniel is starting to develop some of those study habits on his own. Not just having somebody drag them across the finish line by any stretch. He has taught Daniel what he needs to know to be a student and be a college student. And I think Don deserves a lot of credit, because I'm telling you right now, if it weren't for Don, Daniel Green would not have made it to college. He has turned him around, not just getting his grades up, but teaching him how to study and be a college student. And that tremendous amount of credit to Coach Don Johnson for doing that. Number 2, central defensive tackle Marlon Tuipulotu. For a long time, it seemed like Elijah Molten might be in a class of his own. Interest from USC, Stanford, Notre Dame, some of the SEC, all over the country. LSU's been all over Elijah. Marlon has jumped out and made it a battle. He's got offers from Oregon, Oregon State, USC, Iowa State, Utah. There's more. He's incredible. He's one of the top 5 defensive tackles in the country, 6'2", 275 pounds. I talked to him the other day, and he said, well, I wrestle just to be ready for football. And it's like, man, he gets it. He gets that he needs to not just be a big, strong dude. He's at the 5A level at Central. He dominates that level, even if he didn't wrestle. He was second in the state last year in wrestling for the heavyweights at the 5A level. He's the heavy, no pun intended, the heavy favorite to win it this year. He could be a state champion in wrestling, learning balance, learning how to use his hands, learning leverage, learning how to use his body. And he's doing it just to be a better football player. Marlon Tuipulotu is the real deal.
Yeah, real deal. We talked about it earlier. The closest thing that to Ndamukong Suh, as we've seen, in a long time, his dominance at the All-American Combine a month ago was something that a host of people talked about. And I think from the standpoint of the nation's top schools, I think he will hold offers from pretty much everyone before all is said and done.
Agreed.
I mean, it is ridiculous. And last year's 5A Player of the Year, obviously well deserved, and he is definitely in a class of his own. And another reason that this 2017 group is going to be elite and maybe one of the best, if not the best ever.
Credit to Marlon. He wasn't on social media, didn't have a cell phone, wasn't doing all that. And we talked on Facebook, because he did have Facebook. And I said, you got to get the Twitter account. You got to put your huddle film together. You got to put it on there, put your picture up there, make your name, your Twitter name, so that people can find you. And he did it. Credit to him. He wanted to package himself, and he did it. And now you're seeing his Twitter account, and he doesn't dink around on it. It's professional. But every time he gets an offer, he tweets it out and says, I got these offers. And it's not attention-seeking. That's how you market yourself. That's what you're supposed to do. And he's done a great job with that. He's easy to get a hold of now. He's really turned around some of the... If you're an unknown kid from Central High School, you need to make yourself marketable and visible in other ways, because you're not at Jesuit, you're not at Central Catholic. He's done those things and turned himself not only into an elite football player, but an elite football player that's easy to find. And for a kid who's not real comfortable with that and is open about not really liking the attention, he's done a good job of making himself marketable to get the opportunities he deserves.
Yeah, Independence, Oregon isn't necessarily where people go to
it's the hotbed.
So, like you said, credit to him. Really, just a nice kid in general. Super nice, open to anybody that wants to help him. And as you referenced, he started a Twitter. Got back to people, did what he was told, and look what happened.
Yep. Number 1, Elijah Molten. Maybe in danger of losing that spot. If you told him that, he'd go lift weights right then and there. The top cornerback in the last 2 decades in the state of Oregon. Oregon, Stanford, Washington all offered. We talked about it already, but Notre Dame, LSU, a number of schools are on this kid. And he's the best corner the state's produced in 20 years. What are your thoughts on Elijah Molten and not only where he ends up, but where he ends up in the rankings as well as where he ends up for college?
Yeah, complete lockdown corner. I mean, completely changes the game by himself. From an offer standpoint, Arizona State just jumped in the mix last week, offering him. And I mean, out in Vegas last year, that first day we went out, he literally shut down that side of the field. You watch 6'3", 6'4", 3- and 4-star kids get just dominated by Elijah and get so frustrated. All they could do was jaw and talk and other things, and Elijah just did his thing. He doesn't have to talk about it. He doesn't. I mean, the interview we did with him a few weeks ago, you see what type of kid he is. He brings so much more to the table than just what he does on the field. He's not going to cause you any trouble. He just does his thing. And from a work standpoint, I mean, this dude is ridiculous. I mean, Alex Molten, his father, has taught him well, trained him. I mean, elite training his entire life, and it's something special. So I think he'll be a 5-star before all is said and done. And like you said, the best corner/DB that we've had come through here in the last 20 years or what have you.
The only knock, because I do the chart of strengths and weaknesses, the only knock is he was timed recently as at a 4.7, and I don't necessarily think that's indicative of his speed. He's had some ankle issues, so there's a good chance he's more of a 4.55, 4.6 guy. If people are being honest, there aren't very many 4.4 players in the entire country. It's extremely rare. I think the average NFL 40 for wide receivers is a 4.5. So all these people who are talking about, I run a 4.3, 4.4. No, you don't. I mean, you just don't. Because I think only like 15 or 20 kids or 20 guys at the combine have ever run a 4.35 or faster. I mean, it's really rare. So a lot of guys inflate that 40 time. But Elijah, I am a little worried about top-end speed. It's the only concern. It's a minor knock because he had an ankle injury. It affected his time. If he legitimately is a 4.65, 6'3", 4'6", 4" guy, you start to worry just a little bit about top end speed. But other than that, as skilled, as disciplined as any corner you'll find in the country. And if I'm a betting man, obviously, I'm betting on Elijah Molten panning out.
Yeah, I think the one guy that can with the speed thing. I mean, there's a lot of times that people will get X'd out because they're not running the 40 or they have a statistical time that isn't where it needs to be. But I think he's someone that kind of makes up for it, just with his overall intangibles. So moving forward, I still see him as being one of the best players ever to come out of here.
Quickly, I wanted to do highest floor, highest ceiling. The guy who has the highest floor, in other words, if nothing else works, they don't develop anymore, the worst they can be is still an elite player or a good player. And to me, that guy's Elijah Molten. I don't necessarily think he has the highest ceiling. I don't necessarily think that of all this group in the end we'll say he was the top player in the state 20 years from now. You know what I mean? In terms of how far he made it. Mm-hmm. But I think there's no doubt that he's going to be a productive college player. And I don't think necessarily you could see it potentially somehow not working out for some of these kids. But Elijah Molten's a kid that I don't think there's any way, any question that he is a productive college player. Who in your mind has the highest floor?
I mean, you look at Marlon and you see someone that is just straight up dominant. I mean, physically, athletically, just a good kid. I mean, he is so dominant. I have never seen, at least that I can remember, a lineman that completely just takes over. And I think he's going to get better. I mean, he's pushing 6'3" right now, 275, and incredibly mobile, like you said, with wrestling, state champion. And at the next level, I can't even imagine when he gets into a program that's not 5A Oregon football, what they turn him into from just his work in the weight room, his eating, everything. I mean, he could legitimately be a 10-year NFL guy and be an all-pro. I mean, it's hard to say right now, but that would be the kid that I would reference. What's crazy is usually there would be one answer, but with this class, it's actually there's a few kids in here who've got a shot, whether it's Jackson, David Morris, I mean, it's going to come down to health, obviously, too.
To me, the highest ceiling guy, the guy who, not necessarily boom or bust, but just if it all pans out. If it all panned out for every kid on this list, which it won't. Some guys will make it, some guys won't. But if it all panned out for every single one and they reached full potential, to me, the highest ceiling guy is either Tui Peludo or Jackson Kirkland. I could see either of those guys. If everything worked out, they stayed healthy, they developed, they continued to develop, I think either one of those guys could have a 10-plus year NFL career if it all panned out. I don't necessarily think Jackson Kirkland has the highest floor. I think there's possibility that it doesn't work out for him. But in terms of highest ceiling, Marlon Tui Peludo and Jackson Kirkland, to me, both easily, if it all works out, could end up in the NFL.
Love them both. It's going to be a really fun year with 2017. Excited to work with these kids and see what we can do on the 7-on-7 circuit.
Speaking of, a number of these kids playing for Team Oregon taking on Team Washington this coming weekend on Sunday. Should be a huge matchup for eForce football from Team Oregon. First of all, who's on your roster of the guys we talked about, and what do you expect from that matchup? It's a preview potentially of a big-time showdown at the national tournament.
So we're really excited about this. First of all, it's going to be 65 degrees and sunny. This weekend, Sunday, February 21st, we're going to be over at Madison High School. We're bringing FSP, Ford Sports, is bringing down their top team, who is typically one of the top-ranked teams in the country. They'll be going to Vegas as well. They've got four-star athletes, and what we project is being about 20 D1 kids on the field at the same time when all is said and done. Savon Ahmed, been offered by the entire Pac-12, USC, Oregon.
That kid will end up being a 5-star, I think.
He should be a 5-star. He's as good as I've seen at the high school level. You should get out and watch him. Connor Weddington just committed to Washington. Hunter Bryant, 6'3", 230-pound tight end. He's got Washington State, a host of other people. But they're legit. They're legit, and we got our 8th, 9th, and then our 2 high school teams, our upperclassmen and our underclassmen. And they have 4 teams they're bringing down to play as well.
So 4 7-on-7 games, 8th grade game, 9th grade game, kind of an underclassman B game of still talented kids.
Top sophomores.
Yeah. And then the elite teams.
And then the elites. Okay. So we'll play about 3 games between. We'll start at 2 p.m. We'll play probably till 6:30, something like that. We'll use the same rules we're going to use in Las Vegas at the national tourney, and I mean it'll be a lot of fun. We're taking this pretty seriously, and it's fun for the kids to get some good reps before. It'll help everyone before Vegas, because obviously when you get to Vegas, it's a big deal. So yeah, we're excited. You referenced the team, and I think this is going to be we're talking about just the top upperclassmen. It's going to be a defensive battle. We have, assuming he can play with health, Elijah Molden, Demetrius Douglas, David Morris, Anthony Adams.
That's your secondary?
Yeah. So
Good grief.
it's pretty. Braden Lindsay, maybe the top 2018. We have a few other kids in there as well. But, I mean, just a ridiculous secondary. And they've got a very similar secondary as well. So it'll kind of be like, okay, well, who can break these defenses and do their thing? But we're stoked. Offensively, we go 6'4", 6'4", 6'4", 6'2.5" with our bigs. And then on the inside, Warrior Knoll, Braden Lindsay plays some offense. We have our slots that can do some things, and then Connor Neville's our quarterback, so it'll be fun watching him. And then Daniel Green, separate from our DBs, is patrolling that linebacker spot, and he's just intimidating as a person. So
for fans who don't get, I mean, not necessarily don't get it. That's not what I mean. But for fans who don't get the opportunity to see all these guys together, you're looking at potentially Oregon's 2 corner commits for 2017. Elijah and Demetrius both have Oregon offers, and they're high priorities for Oregon. You're offered this early. You're a huge priority. So potentially Oregon's 2 corners, Daniel Green, who's got heavy interest from Oregon and Oregon State at middle linebacker, David Morris, a safety linebacker who's got an offer from Oregon State. You could be looking at a defense when it's 7-on-7 of 5 or 6 guys who are future starters for the Ducks and Beavers, all on the field together, going against Washington's guys who obviously they have a Washington commit, a 5-star athlete who could play a number of places. Oregon and Oregon State are both interested in Ahmed. So you've got an opportunity here to preview a lot of Pac-12 talent in one place. You will not find a high school matchup in the state of Oregon or the state of Washington. I'm talking state title games that has this much talent on the field. Like Jordan said earlier, there are 20 legit Pac-12 players that are going to play in this game. An opportunity like this doesn't come around. And this is the kind of stuff that I geek out about and get excited about and start ranting and raving about a month before. This has been on my calendar for a month. I cannot wait to go take notes. I can't wait to watch the film of this thing. I'm going to go nuts, and I hope some fans come out and watch it too.
Yeah, we're expecting actually a really big crowd. The Ford Sports 8th graders won the national championship last year in Las Vegas, so they're 9th graders now. Our 8th grade group is that team. Part of the team is that Grant group that won the national title over the last few years. They were 60-0 over the last 6 seasons. Plus, Cade Knighton, Jordan Wooden at quarterback, and a few other guys that are pretty ridiculous.
For people who don't know, I started getting emails about Cade Knighton in the 7th grade. There are people that think he's the number one, and it's so early. Yeah. But he's supposed to be like the number 1 quarterback in the country for his class, and I think he's a freshman this year. And then that Grant team, I've been getting emails from people about prospects. Start writing about the Grant kids now, because they did go 60-0, and they've got a couple kids who, it's, again, way too early. But as they project to some of the top players in the country at their age. Will they continue to develop? Will their bodies grow? How will they handle the classroom? All that stuff. But that 8th to 9th grade team potential has extreme potential too, where you could be previewing guys way before they end up being on this list. But they'll be guys from this top 10 3 years from now, 4 years from now playing.
Elijah Elliott, remember that name? 8th grader at Grant. He is absolutely silly.
That's the name.
Elijah Elliott, man. This kid is out of control, and he'll be out there with the other Grant kids, DeMar J. Nelson, Miles Jackson. There's a host of kids that are elite, and as you referenced, Cade Knighton, Jordan Wooden, only a 7th grader. So, I mean, I could go on and on about all these kids, but they'll all be there, the top players in the state of Oregon and the state of Washington for all of those classes, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grade. And we expect to do well at the national tourney as well, so it'll definitely be good from a repetition standpoint going against top competition. And Tracy Ford and Ford Sports, they do a great job as well, so it should be a lot of fun.
for people who don't understand, and going back one more time, that Oregon secondary, Molten,
Demetrius Douglas,
David Morris,
David Morris,
and Anthony Adams.
Anthony
But
Adams.
three of those guys
Were on the
were
team
the
last
starting secondary last year that finished fourth in the nation,
Yeah.
or went to the Final Four. Their only loss was to Bishop Gorman, who had National Sophomore of the Year Tate Martell at quarterback and five-star receiver Tyjon Lindsey at outside receiver, slot receiver, kind of doing his thing. So this group is back from finishing in the top four last year. They have national championship aspirations, as does this team, Washington. Go to that event if you can. It starts at 2 o'clock, Madison, Sunday?
Yeah, 2 p.m. Alex Brink is back coaching our team, and we got a host of our other coaches. Ryan DePaulo, James Dockery has been a great guy, great coach for us. Darren Thomas, the former Oregon quarterback. Aaron Kinsey runs our D. He does a phenomenal job. He had that D last year on lock when we made that semifinal run. We only lost Brady Breeze, so we bring back pretty much
Big loss?
Big loss.
But
I shouldn't say because I love Brady. That's my guy. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I got you.
So it's going to be a lot of fun. We've practiced pretty hard, and next Sunday at 2 p.m. we'll kick this off.
Very excited. Jordan, thank you for joining me and listening to me ramble and rant for a little while. A lot of fun as always, and I'll see you Sunday for sure.
Appreciate it, buddy.